thought it'd be a good opportunity to just talk a little bit about growers and thinking about security. And James Johnson is here today. James has responsibilities for John Deere's cybersecurity unit, and I thought it'd be good if we just kind of did a little tag team and talk through hopefully some practical things for you to think about as you think about this new world that we're in with connected space and the ability to connect machines, the ability to connect your operation, the ability to see things that you haven't seen before through data. But also, what does that mean in terms of protecting your data? And how do you think about that a little bit? And so hopefully we'll give you some practical things that you can work through. I'm going to talk a little bit just about precision ag and what I see as a big revolution that's coming across agriculture. Whether you're a row cropper only, whether you run a row crop and a livestock and a pork operation, whether you're just doing pork, whatever you're doing. This revolution's coming. You're seeing it already, right? So you've all got a cell phone, and you probably might be the last thing you look at before you go to bed, and it might be the first thing you look at when you get up in the morning. You never thought you'd have a computer that you'd laid right next to your head every night when you went to bed, but you do, and you're used to looking at stuff, and you're used to looking at data, and what the revolution that's happening in ag is that now. With the use of sensors and the use of the ability to pull that data together, you're able to see your operation in ways that you might not have been able to see before. And so one of the questions that I like to ask John Deere customers sometimes is, so what are you seeing now that you haven't seen before? You've always wondered, so how's your operation actually running? Do you really know? And so I'll talk a little bit about some things. When I think about precision ag, it's getting past that black box of what's really going on inside my operation. Some of you may be in a situation where you're either farming a new field or you've got too big an operation for you to cover yourself, and you can use data to help you do that. So we're going to break this up a little bit. So I'm going to talk a little bit. I did my little bit of talking. I'm going to hand this over to James and let him talk a little bit about security. This is something that you read in the news every day around credit cards, around other kind of information. So we're going to try to give you some practical tips there. And then I'll come back and talk a little bit about precision ag and how to think about that in terms of securing your data. Okay? And then we'll take some questions. So I don't know if you want this guy or do you want that guy. Okay. Good deal.
Good morning. It's great to be here tonight. This is my favorite topic. I need to use the lavalier. Okay.
Turn it off, and that's what matters.
Try to avoid the squeal if I can. You guys get to listen to all the noise. It's great to be here. My favorite topic is cybersecurity, and I think we can never have enough awareness in this topic, so it's fun to get a chance to talk to some people that hopefully are John Deere customers. Two things we should probably discuss real quick up front is what is information security and what is cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is basically protecting data as it traverses network systems or is stored. Information security is protecting data in all formats. So it could be physical, it could be on your phone, it could be a document that you print out. I think a lot of companies struggle with seeing both sides of the equation here because you can do a lot to secure your networks and your systems, but if you don't take care of the physical side, it doesn't matter. Are we getting some feedback on this mic? Or is it just... Okay, thank you. Some of the motivations of really what we're trying to protect here, these haven't really changed in the last 20 years. We're trying to protect the confidentiality, the integrity, the availability, and the safety of our network systems and data. Let's just briefly discuss what each one of these things means. So confidentiality, is this... Sorry. Okay. Gotcha. Sorry. Confidentiality is just keeping things that are supposed to be secret. Pretty simple. Integrity means that the information has not been modified. You can attest to who created the information. You can attest that it's being kept and managed the right way. It's also making sure that the information is not destroyed before it's supposed to be destroyed. On the availability side, this really hasn't been a major issue for security for a long time. In the last 2 years, it's really come back into fruition, and I'll explain that in a minute why it's it's more important, but it's just making sure your data is available in a secure manner. And then lastly, safety, which has been kind of added in the last couple of years as well. And I'll speak to why that's important, but it's making sure that your production operations aren't affected by digital changes that would in some way endanger the lives of your employees, your customers, the general public. So making sure our tractors do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it. Making sure our production operation systems building our tractors, we don't harm anyone in the making of our vehicles. So let's speak to why things have shifted on availability just briefly. You heard of ransomware or cyber extortion activities? What they're doing is they're basically making your information unavailable to you. So here's how cyber or ransomware works. It's software that's installed on your computer. You have no idea it was probably installed. It's not usually caught by most antivirus suppliers. It installs software in the background, and then it basically starts to encrypt all the documents on your computer that are important to you. It could be Word documents, Excel, family pictures. Think of what's in your PC. It looks for those file extensions, and then it tries to encrypt that data. Once it finishes encrypting all the data, it then gives you a little pop-up that says, hey, if you want this data back, you want to see it again, you have to pay a certain amount of money to a PayPal account or to some online account. So it's affecting the availability of your data. But this used to be a very big issue, but in the last 2 years we've seen just a huge spike in ransomware. Simple way to fix that is to have backup somewhere offline. So just looking for a simple answer to that. You don't care at all about the data. If you have a backup somewhere else, just say, rebuild your PC and go on. Around safety, the challenge there really, we've seen foundries hacked, so places where we pour hot molten steel. Deere's not had attacks, to my knowledge, at those locations, but we saw one in Germany last year. From another public company in Germany that was attacked. They shut their entire foundry down. You can imagine the cost of that. If you've been watching the news, you've also seen things around smart grid technology or basically the power grids being shut down in certain parts of the world. Those are attacks that I think affect the safety. If all of a sudden on a hot day in Arizona, there's no power, people are probably going to die. The loss of life potential is there for sure. Make sense? I can tell you that from a Deere perspective, securing data on our networks is challenging. It's even harder when you go to the cloud. There's some opportunities to be more secure in the cloud, but as we see this proliferation of the cloud, oops, I thought that was going to build out. We're having increasing opportunities to find ways to secure our data in those locations. We should be deliberate about where we put our data. Be deliberate about who's taking care of our data. We should know how they're taking care of our data. So a good example is that a lot of folks will blame Target for the data breach they had, and they definitely had some issues on their networks. But realize that when you walk into Target as a consumer, you have a choice. You can pay with a credit card, or you can pay with cash. There are probably gas stations within walking distance of this location that I probably would not pay with a credit card at, because I walk in there and it doesn't look like it's a very nice gas station. They probably don't have good security practices. I'm going to pay cash there to buy gas for my vehicle. You have a choice as a consumer as to where you're going to put your data, and it's important. It's going to be there for a long time. It should matter. So as you start to connect different areas of your operations to the cloud, and there's some awesome opportunities to learn and to gain insights there, it's really important that you're deliberate about how you do that and that you care. I mentioned earlier the physical pieces. I guess maybe we'll just speak to a couple of examples. I think storytelling works better in some cases. When we think about all the different accounts that we have, and in the old days, I used to have probably 10 different email accounts. And I had different reasons for having different email accounts, but today I have 2. Right? It's very difficult for me to manage all the data coming into those accounts. When your identity is stolen, and it happens more often than I like to talk about to people, they hack into your email accounts and they look for all the information you have there. Think about all the things that you've sent, all the things that you've received. Did you have statements go there from your credit cards, from your banks? Did you have your password reset information there? What do you have stored there? Did you send the password to one of your kids or to your wife or your husband and say, hey, here's the password for an account? That will be in your sent items unless you deleted it. So the hygiene you practice about where you put your data, how you protect it, and what you leave in there is there until you delete it. In most cases, you'll never, ever fill up your Gmail account. It's 10 gigs of data. If you filled it up, I'm impressed. It's hard to do that. So when you get hacked, it's really difficult to figure out what all you may have lost, right? And then once it's happened, you can't get back into your account. You have to call for help. On the physical side, obviously the threats haven't changed there a lot, but they're becoming more sophisticated. They're learning things. These two worlds kind of emerge when you think about break-ins at homes. People go out and they post on Facebook, hey, I'm on vacation in Hawaii today. Right? I know you're not there all of a sudden. So what am I going to do if I'm a criminal and I have access to your Facebook page? I'm going to go maybe to your house and look for a way to break in. My favorite story here is who saw the Get to Know Your Friend Better with 20 questions that used to come out and they'd say, hey, answer these 20 questions. That was pretty cool, right? Those questions came directly from a banking questionnaire. So the security questions you could answer to verify that you are who you say you are, that's where those questions came from. So if I got you to respond to that, all I needed to know was your user ID. And I could go fill out your security questions, get access to your account. So things that seem very trivial might mean a lot, and you need to think about what you're doing online before you do it. So that's a good example of how those worlds collide, in my opinion. The threats haven't really changed much either. So the top two threats that we see out there are organized crime and malicious insider, which is basically somebody who works at your company who's not happy, and they have access to your network and they want to do what they want to do. And they have access to do it in most cases. The motivations are usually financial, or they have a grudge. There is some espionage that occurs for global operations and companies that have unique technology. So the more profitable you are, the more unique your technology, the better chances that you'll be targeted from an espionage standpoint. And those are very sophisticated attacks and very hard to detect. Usually when you hear about those, it's because somebody comes to your door from the FBI and says, you've had an issue. Right? Cyber terrorists and I think hacktivists probably do apply to this industry more than most. Animal rights and people that have real issues around that are going to care, and if they have some way to mess up your operations, they're going to do it. So if your password is password 123 that controls your entire barn, and what can that do? Right? What can they do with that access to your facility or to your operation? The threats continue to evolve, but this is probably the best list I've seen. So what are some things that you should do and that you shouldn't do? The first thing I would tell you that you shouldn't do is you should not assume that security is built in or turned on by default. Anything that you're going to buy or purchase or any service you're going to work with. Right? Those things are designed to work out of the box. You have to manually go in there and change the settings to secure them. So don't make assumptions that that's going to be done for you. You have to make that effort. Secondly, when it comes to attacking people and trying to get information they don't want to give up, the number one way is phishing campaigns. So sending out emails to try to get you to divulge information you don't want to divulge. They're getting very good at this. They're sending 2 or 3 emails in a row. They're telling you a story with the 2 or 3 different emails. So the first email might be obviously a phishing campaign. The second one links back to the first one and it looks more legitimate. A third email might be from somebody in your operations and it looks very legitimate. But there could be one small change. Right? If your email address is jamesjohnson@johndeere.com and it's john.deere, that didn't come from my company. Are you looking that closely at where it came from? It's really challenging to detect these things out there, but it's important that you're careful. If you didn't expect the email, delete it. If it's important, they'll give you a phone call, usually, I've found. I'd say be situationally aware of what's happening in your world. If you have kids going to college, if you're buying a house, you're buying a car, if you've given a bunch of information to the government for some reason recently for loan applications or something like that, realize your information is now more public than it used to be. Renovating your house is a good example too. If people are in your house, you don't know them, what information do you have laying around? What bills do you have sitting out? What information is on those bills? Be aware of what's happening in your world and why that might increase your threat. So the next thing would be monitoring your credit, monitoring your accounts. The faster you detect these things happening in your world, the better. The most common way that corporations are notified of breaches today is law enforcement. It used to be fraud detection, so like your credit card companies, but now it's much more common that it's coming from law enforcement. So the world really is changing and they have better visibility than a lot of the credit card companies do. Anything else I should call out there, Lane?
I don't think so. Maybe just around the password piece. Just
Oh, yeah.
changing your password too.
Yeah, so passwords are obviously kind of the Achilles heel of everything we do today, especially in the cloud. Number one thing I'll tell you is make it complex as you can. Use passphrases. But 2, don't use the same passphrase for all of your accounts. Right? People can look at the to field or the CC field of an email and see the different accounts you might be using or your friends. And if they can identify those accounts and the same password is there, they're going to be going where they want to go.
Are you pro or con to things like LastPass and other passwords?
whatever you can use to manage your passwords is a good thing as long as they're different and that they're complex. So by complex, I mean you've got uppercase and lowercase letters. You've got unique characters like asterisks or exclamation point, question marks. Those things make it much harder to crack your password. It can still be done very fast, don't get me wrong. But it makes it harder to go on to the next victim because it's just easier.
And one thing I would say is don't make the password into that really easy.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but I can remember lane 1, 2, 3, so that's what I'm going to use to get into all my passwords, because once they crack that, they've got everything.
So I've given you a little bit of my pitch. I'll let Lane come back and talk to you a little bit about how this applies to the precision ag market.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, so one of the things that, and my wife and kids really give me a hard time because I have really complex passwords, and then I require them to change their passwords too. But those password keepers are pretty nice because we have so many different accounts, right? And we're always, and it's like, oh, what was that password? And then there are ways they'll do that, but you got to be sure that the way to get in, it's basically the way to get into the vault can't be that easy. All right, so that's the way I think about it. I think the other thing I would say to James's point is around the email thing to think about a little bit is he's right. They're getting very sophisticated. Used to, you could look at it and say, well, that's not my bank, right? That's not my credit card company or whatever. But if you get an email out of the blue that says, well, why do I have that? And it has a phone number on it. Especially, so I just had this happen to me and I got an email with a phone number on there, and I was like, and my wife says, well, let's call them. And it said, call this number because you've got a credit card issue. I said, no, let's go find the credit card, look on the back of the credit card, and I'm going to call that number. Because if I really have an issue, that's the way to find it, right? I'm not going to trust the email that I got. Even though the email might be legit, I know I've got another phone number, and it was a different phone number. So anyway, those kinds of things, I think the best advice I try to give myself is before I click on something, think about what am I clicking on, right? What am I doing? Why am I clicking on this? Before I fill out a survey, and I'm the survey guy in my house, right? If Steve sends me a survey about what the talk was like, I'm going to fill it out. I love filling out surveys. Why am I filling the survey out, and what am I actually telling people? So just things to think about a little bit. I think the other transition I'm going to make a little bit, and James talked about it, but if you yourself know that you're using the cloud today, probably if you have a Hotmail account, you have a Gmail account, you have something, all that data is stored in the cloud. The cloud is nothing more than a huge network of data centers. That's what it is, right? They're storing your data on server somewhere. And so when you start thinking about your operation and collecting data off of your operation, more than likely that data is going to move to the cloud too. And as James said, there's a lot of good security tools in these cloud offerings, okay? Amazon, when you're buying things on Amazon, man, they're really up, very, very up to date on security kinds of things, right? They do a really nice job of this, and a lot of companies do. The thing that I would encourage you to do is, before you start sending your data around, think through where am I putting it and what's happening. There are a lot of advantages for you to have your operation wired together so that you can actually see what's happening. Not just the is the temperature in my hog operation going up in the middle of the night and I need an alert on my phone, which you might need just so you can jump out there and do something. But just overall, how can you use data to manage your operation better than you're managing it today? Because more than likely there are things that you can use. You can capture data on different parts of your operation that tell you some things that you've kind of always wanted to know but just weren't sure. So in our world, we think about how's data management, how do we keep it secure, but also how do we use it to enable things, and more importantly, how can it add value? And so try not to collect data just because you can collect data, but how do you collect data in such a way that adds some value? And so one of the questions I ask people is, what's the thing that gets you up in the morning? Everything. What's the thing you're like? I got to get up and find out the answer to this thing. How are things going? Second question might be, is there a way to use data to actually help me answer that question rather than me have to walk out there or drive 50 miles or 20 miles over to something to see what's happening, right? We've got some data principles that we follow. I'd like to encourage you to think about these kind of principles yourself a little bit. Where's the data valuable? in our world, because we're kind of in a place where we connect with a lot of farmers and a lot of their partners, how do we be transparent about how we're dealing with your data? So we want to be real transparent with you around what are we doing and what have we done, right? So that you know what's happening. And then the last one is around, in the way we think about data is you control the data. So you get to determine where the data goes and what happens. We don't. We make it very transparent what we're doing. We also make it very transparent what you can do, right? So the reality is, farmers, we don't farm alone. We got partners. We're going to share data with those partners. And the operation, I manage something called John Deere Operations Center, and you can create partnerships, much like friending somebody on Facebook. I send you a request, you reply to the request, and now, James and I have created a partnership in Ops Center. In your world, you can actually look and see, well, who do I have a partnership with? Who am I sharing data with? And what data am I sharing fields and not sharing fields, right? So we try to create that kind of transparency and give you the opportunity to control that information as best we can. Oh, I didn't point out, so we do have a little Deere.com/trust if you want to see some of that. And it's not, it's something, it's kind of hopefully for you, it's kind of a framework for you to think about, okay, what are my other companies and partners doing, and how do they think about this? When we think about precision ag, it is, our dealers are critical to what we do. We are collecting data, and I got an example here in a minute around how we're actually collecting data on machines, and what are we doing with that, right? So one of the things that happens that we've seen is with this precision ag world is we're using that information to create better machines and better performance. So how do we use it to do a better job with fuel? How do we do it to design better components within that last longer? So we're using that data to help us improve our operation. And so as you think about it, I'd encourage you, how do you use your data to improve your operation and get better than what you're doing, right? We're also, and I'll talk a little bit about this, better job performance. So you don't care as much about the machine as what the work the machine is actually doing for you. So is the machine able to do what I need it to do? Is it a big enough tractor? Is it covering the ground fast enough? What's it doing? So we call that a job. So we actually have sensors now on our machines that say, okay, how well a job is it doing? My favorite is planting. So, how many of you run a planter before, and you run it for a little while, you stop the tractor, you get out, you walk around the back, you dig down and say, okay, is it putting seed out like I want it to, right? Is it where it needs to be? Is it deep enough? Is it whatever? Well, we've got sensors on our latest planter called ExactEmerge that'll measure that for you, so you can ride in the cab of your tractor. You can actually see it in your truck too if you want to. But if you're in the cab of your tractor, you can actually see how the job is being performed. Right, so that's pretty important. And I talked a little bit about this, but so I manage something called Operations Center. Yes, it's in the cloud. Yes, it's using good security practices. And the reason that we've built this thing is because we recognize the importance of data. We recognize the importance of you and in terms of your partnerships and how do you share. So we try to connect your partners together. We connect dealers in there, but we also have set it up in such a way that you can connect fields and connect operators that you've got. You can see your machines, all those kinds of things, right? So we try to build that in, always kind of with a security first kind of mentality around how do you do this, right? So let me just talk a little bit about these sensors on the ExactEmerge. So this tractor's pulling, the 8R tractor pulling a 24-row deal. It's using the little bubble here on the top right. This I got a short cord. That's basically the auto track in the tractor that's connecting with satellites that are flying around out in space, right? So it gives about the strength of signal of about a 40-watt bulb, and it's about 2,000 miles away. And so, that thing on the top of that cab is actually picking up that 40-watt signal and giving you guidance down to, in some cases, if you're using some other technology like RTK and whether you're down to sub 3-inch kind of accuracy, sometimes more than that, right, depending on where you are. So it's got a satellite piece to it, and then that tractor's got sensors, and then that Exact-Emerge planter. If it's a 24-row deal, there's 3 sensors and controllers on every row piece, and another 3 in the middle. So total 77. You got 3 times 24 is 72, and you got another 5 sensors at the head of the planter. So that's 77 sensors on that planner, just collecting data about how well the job performs. So why don't I give you this example? So one, I think it's pretty cool because I'm a technology guy. But the other is, as you think about your operation and where this whole precision ag world is going, that's where it's going, right? You can start collecting a lot of data. Some of you may have operations already where you're collecting information around temperature and humidity, maybe the amount of ammonia that you've got in there, whatever you're doing, right? So as you think about that, I'm kind of here to give you 2 messages, James and I are. One is there's a lot of power in being able to do that for you. They give you a lot more visibility. You might do it so you can save money. You might also do it because guess what? I can run a bigger operation now because I'm collecting more data across, so now I can actually cover more houses or more fields or whatever because I've got this. Second thing, though, you got to always keep the security piece in mind, right? So where's the data going? Who's got it? What are they doing with it? Do they have a data policy? I mean, you're probably like me whenever you get some software and you get that thing that says, do you agree or disagree? You just hit agree, right? Yeah, I agree. If it's critical to what you're sharing, look at it. Read it. Or if you got a person, ask them some questions. So what are you doing with that data? Where does it go? Oh, really? It's in the cloud? What does that mean? What kind of cloud are you talking about? You know, are you securing that data? Do you share that data with anybody else or not? You know, questions like that. You don't have to know a lot to just ask a few questions and go, okay, I think this is a good deal, to try to figure it out. And that's what I'd encourage you to do, right? And anytime you're going to do that, whether it's a USB stick where you're just pulling data off of something and handing it to somebody, or if they're moving data, you know, in a bigger way, you know, through a cloud or through a little device in your house, in the you know, on the farm or whatever, then just ask those questions. Just ask some questions. And sometimes I think we're a little afraid to ask the questions because we don't think we're technology. We don't know that much about technology, so we're afraid we're going to look dumb. Guess what? It's your operation and it's your farm and it's your livelihood. So ask some questions. You know, what are you doing with it? What else is going on? Is that all you use it for? Do you have that in writing anywhere? Can I look at that and see what you're doing? Just want to know. Just want to know. So maybe with that, I think that's my last slide. And you want to moderate some questions or whatever? If you guys want to ask some questions, be happy to talk. Yes, sir.
Can you point out some resources to producers? Like, there's so much data. How do you keep it? What should I do as a producer to kind of mentally and procedurally keep track and organize?
Boy, that's a good question around how to think about it. I can't think of. This is an evolving area in terms of how to think about that. I mean, and I'll tell you guys this, right? We're actually trying to make our site a little easier to read and a little more plain language than we have now. I don't know. Do you have any ideas about tips about sites to go to or whatever, to checklists or whatever? That's a really, really good question.
I think you mentioned earlier you're a password keeper. I mean, a lot of this is just managing a bunch of different applications that do different things for you. There's a lot of specialist applications that you can use. And the best way probably is just to use a password generator and a password keeper like that, so you can at least keep track of what it is. And you do get what you pay for. So what I would tell you is that free apps are great, and we offer free apps at Deere, but behind those free apps are people like me and people like Lane that care about security. A lot of companies are just trying to offer a service, and what they're going to get back for that service is your data. Right? And that's what those agreements say if you read through them. That basically, thanks for using this app, but your data is now our data. So be advised that you do get what you pay for when you're using these services. So paying for the password keeper is usually a better option.
My question really is there's data coming from the tractor, planter, you've got back office systems, you've got partners feeding stuff to, and you're feeding stuff back out. Is there like a general, maybe some sort of set of standards that people are talking about in terms of here's some things to help organize how data is flowing from me to Deere to Monsanto and back?
Yeah, well, there are not so much around the security piece of it. There's a group called Ag Gateway that's really trying to create standards around how we move data around. And do it in a format that makes it easy to your point, read data from Monsanto back to Deere and whatever, right? There is that kind of a format. But at this point in the industry, every company kind of has their own data policy and what they do with it. So the ag world's been flooded with venture capital dollars from California. There's an ag software company every time you turn around, right? And some of those guys are really clear. They say, yeah, we want your data. We're going to use it, and we're going to use it somewhere else and sell it, or we're going to use it to understand better about what markets are doing, or whatever. I mean, they're telling you. So that's why I say ask, because at this point, every company's got a different, kind of a different policy. So, other questions, thoughts?
So if you do get attacked by ransomware, what's the best experience out there? Do you pay? Do you not pay? Do you use Bitcoin? How do you get Bitcoin?
Do you have a backup?
So backing up your PC, you mean, right? So yeah.
You just say, thanks anyway, rebuild your PC. If you can do it yourself, great. Take it to Best Buy. If not, then rebuild your PC. If you want to pay, usually the faster you pay, the less expensive it is. If you're going to do that, I would recommend calling your credit card company or your bank and saying, I need a one-time credit card number that is for this amount of money. Otherwise, you just gave these really bad people a legitimate credit card number that could be used to do other things. So that's the best example I can give you for how you get around it. Again, backing up your data is the most important thing, because if you do that, it doesn't really matter. It just takes some time to rebuild your machine. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Good question.
Painful. I've had ransomware. I've had my identity stolen. I mean, so it's just, yeah.
Any more questions, comments for Lane or James? We have plenty of time if you have any.
Can you say you have there's a website for trying your data?
Yep. Deere.com/trust. Right there. Trust. Yep. Yeah. API standards across the industry or within Deere?
Both. What are you guys seeing?
Yep. So we're trying to use Ag Gateway as this consortium to get standards around how we move data around. Yep. We do have API partners today that where we provide a access to companies to actually call our APIs. It's developerdeere.com, and they can. So the way this works is a company can say, "Listen, I want to be on your platform, and I want to partner with some people." But rather than them manually having to go push the data to me every time they get an update, I'd like an API so that I can pull that data out. So API is an application programmable interface. Sorry. But it's kind of a techie way of pulling a lot of data if you need to. So let's suppose I'm a grower in John Deere Operations Center. Let's say I'm running a 2,000 acre operation. Let's say I've got 50 fields. No, I got less than 50 fields on 2,000 acres. But anyway, I had 20 fields, right? And you come to me and you say, and what's your name? Lisa. So Lisa says, "Hey Lane, I offer this great service for you. Would you create a partnership with me in Ops Center?" So yeah, I'll do that because I like your service and whatever. And so I create a friend request basically in Ops Center. We create a partnership, but then because you have 25, 50 other partners in the same thing, you say, "I would rather have an API to pull that data." And so you can do that. But you can only get the data if you and I have created a partnership. And I know that I know that I have a partnership with you, right? So that's this trust thing, right? And that's your ability to control who's actually got that data. So, but if you do, then yeah, I can basically, in the way, easy way to think about it is it's a way to get a bulk of data at once rather than you every time, "Hey, did you update your field? Well, then send me the data," right? You can just get it. But you can only do that if you've created a trust relationship. Yep.
sell insurance for livestock and livestock buildings, but of course all our carriers are people do the cyber stuff too, and it's interesting. A lot of what our carriers will. A lot of your applications can have a lot of questions on it about what you guys just shared. Do you do this? Do you do this? Right. You guys could be the insurance underwriters. Sorry.
That might be a good deal. I don't know.
There's a lot of similarities to what you guys share as to what your insurance company is going to ask you if you purchase a cyber product. And obviously, if you do everything you guys are talking about, your premium's going to be lower because you're not at risk.
So we have insurance in
It's kind of a
here.
good educational tool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they do ask a lot of these questions you're talking about. We do have insurance. I think we're way ahead of the curve from that standpoint in the industry, having protections in place around that.
Yes, sir.
With this trust thing online, can you choose what data you get, what people can see, or what data of yours? Because I'm just what's stopping someone that you don't necessarily want to this app and then just screenshotting it and then taking that data or something like that?
Yeah, good question. So today in Ops Center, you can share on a field-by-field basis. So you mentioned Monsanto earlier, right? So let's suppose that half my farm is DeKalb and the other half is Pioneer, right? I can tell you which one's going to yield better, but but Deere will plant it all. We'll plant it all. So in Ops Center, I would say I want to share with my Monsanto guy. I want to share these fields with him, but with my Pioneer field, I want to share those fields with her, right? Kind of a thing, right? And you can determine where it goes. The only way they could actually screenshot it is if they're sitting there looking at it. They can actually get in there and see your operation, and they shouldn't be able to because you've got the username and password for that. So yeah, you determine on a field-by-field level what they can see of your kind of production data. But it's a good question. I mean, and then we provide a way for you to actually see what you've done, so you kind of know, okay, this is what I did. Because sometimes you forget. I forget.
I love that question, though. I think that's the way the world works. People don't realize that probably the best way to steal data today is with your cell phone. You got 10 megapixels, you can take a picture. How much can I fit on a computer screen? Take a picture of that. And really, there is no protection for getting that information out of the company. It's very difficult to stop that.
Any more questions, comments for Lane or James?
Thank you guys very much.